Lift up your hands, ye heroes, and swear with proud disdain. The wretch that would ensnare you shall lay his snares in vain. Should Europe empty all her force, we'll meet her in array, and fight and shout and shout and fight for North America. Torn from a world of tyrants beneath this western sky, we formed a new dominion, a land of liberty.
Well, remember how you asked if it was where Christopher Columbus lived? He did discover the New World, but that was about 100 years before the Mayflower sailed from Europe to the Americas and settled in Jamestown. More and more settlers came and moved to different regions that became known as New England colonies, Middle colonies, and Southern colonies. Together they made up the original 13 colonies, and this is the topic of my unit plan. Throughout this 3 to 5 week long California Standards-based unit for 5th graders, I include activities that address the different types of learners Dr. Howard Gardner discusses in his multiple intelligences theory. I also integrate various technologies throughout the unit. My objective for this unit is that by the end of this unit, students will know the social, political, and economic aspects of the colonial era, starting from the origins of the 13 colonies and leading up to the causes of the Revolutionary War. For my visual spatial learners, I will allow them to use MindMeister to take notes on the information presented in the PowerPoint lesson, as well as watch a BrainPop video about the causes of the Revolutionary War, and they will also create a map of Jamestown with the correct labels. For my verbal linguistic learners, I will ask them to narrate a first-hand account of the colonial era in a primary source online. I will also ask them to write a letter on the class Tumblr blog to the settlers after considering what advice they might offer to the settlers, and they will prepare a blog to write journal entries describing what life was like in the colonies. For my interpersonal learners, students will use MindMeister to collaborate and guide each other through reviewing and recalling the social, political, and economic causes of the Revolutionary War, as well as facts about the 13 colonies. As a group, they will also come up with and type out 5 questions and their answers to include in the Adventures in the 13 Colonies game. And of course, they will play the Adventures in the 13 Colonies game. In addition to that, students will analyze and decide if their group will continue to pledge their allegiance to the Great Britain or not, and design and organize a web quest or blog to convince the teacher on their stance. For my naturalist learners, students will use MindMeister or Thinking Map to list the major categories that the colonies were in, such as New England, Middle colonies, or Southern colonies, and then list each of the states from the original 13 colonies under its appropriate category. They will also go to a website that will teach them the phrases of colonial settlers such as "good morrow" and "how do you fare." Students will also research on the internet and explore the different types of foods that were eaten in the 18th century and compare it to the foods eaten in the 21st century. Logical mathematical students will use MindMeister, Thinking Maps, or Venn diagram to help them compare and contrast the beliefs of William Penn, King Charles II, and those in Massachusetts, describe the beginnings of slavery in the New World, as well as define vocabulary terms using an online dictionary and typing answers into a Word document, and create a crossword puzzle with vocabulary words of the unit, and use an online crossword puzzle maker to help them design it. The bodily kinesthetic learners will use MindMeister, Thinking Maps, or Venn diagram to list the differences between the New England colonies, Middle colonies, and Southern colonies. They can also draw pictures if they would like to. These students will also take a virtual field trip to Jamestown or Williamsburg to see the community, family homes, and jobs that existed. And lastly, they will stage a class play based on a colonial era story and be videotaped. Musical rhythmic learners will be given the chance to brainstorm ideas for taking a modern tune and rewriting lyrics for the colonial times, and then recording the song on the computer. And lastly, intrapersonal learners will journal in their blog posts about what they're learning so far, have a list of questions to ask Pocahontas, journal in their blog posts about slavery, and journal in their blog posts about the hardships the colonists might have had in settling in a new land. So what have I learned from this class? I've learned that incorporating multiple intelligences and technology are hard work and is also challenging, but it is rewarding and addresses the needs of all learners in the class. So hopefully when I have my own classroom, I will be able to implement these.